Last night I went to see Rick Beato live in London. He was at the Cadogan Hall, which is this rather lovely 900-seat venue right in the heart of London. So I took my seat up in the balcony. On stage there was an electric piano, there was a pair of Vox AC30s, I think they were, they're definitely Vox amps, and there was a Les Paul Special in yellow, so I'm not sure if that was his signature one, because I thought his signature one was only in blue, but there was a Les Paul Special and a few effects pedals. The show started with a video montage showing some of his bigger interviews at Sting, Dave Gilmour, Peter Frampton, loads of others, and then he walks out onto stage, and he's not at all hesitant, he's not at all self-conscious, he comes out like he owns the place. You know, you sort of think to yourself that maybe a guy that's used to just sitting in his studio talking to a camera, that being confronted with 900 people he might suddenly be a bit hesitant, self-conscious and crumble. Not a bit of it, he's just as good as he is on camera. And then of course you learn that he was a college professor, so he's quite used to this kind of thing, and he is a natural communicator, very smart guy, and he wasn't using a script at all. It was all from memory, a memory which he mentioned quite often is very good. He says he possesses an extremely good memory. Now, Rick said in the evening he attributes part of his success on YouTube is to the fact that he kind of weaves a narrative in his videos, and he thinks that's important to all videos, to have some kind of narrative going through him. So I'm going to do the same thing with this video, because he does seem to have done a bit better than me on YouTube, and as with a lot of Rick's narratives in his videos, I'm going to relate this back to myself. So I reckon I first watched one of Rick's videos maybe 2018, 2019, and probably one of the first things I saw was that video that went viral of him playing notes on the piano and his son identifying them, which is incredible. I mean, his son had just the most unbelievable ear, and he told a story about how he did it and how it had ended up with millions and millions of views. And off the back of that, so many people asked him about it that he made a YouTube video explaining it, put that onto YouTube, and that's kind of what kick-started his channel. So I used to watch quite a lot of Rick's videos. I'd be sitting in my studio watching them, and my eldest daughter, so this was quite a few years ago, she was reasonably young at the time, she'd come in and go, "I don't know how you can watch that guy, he's really annoying." And I was like, "What are you talking about? I don't think he's annoying, I think he's really interesting, I love his content." She was going, "No, I think he's annoying." And somehow, kids are often right, aren't they? I started to find his videos a bit annoying. I think it was because he kind of, maybe it was the ones I was choosing to watch. He seemed to be talking about himself more and more often rather than the subject matter. But I'd still be tempted by some of the videos because he's great at thumbnails and titles that really, they're irresistible, you have to click on them. In fact, I liked it so much that I even bought the Beato book, which is a fantastic resource for music theory, and I have to say I haven't spent as much time on that as I should have done, but as my daughter's just started A-level music, I'm probably going to have to start looking at it, because I wasn't ever formally taught, and although I know what's going on with the music, sometimes the theory and the proper notation eludes me. Also, one of the other things I found was that Sting interview. I think the first couple of minutes of that seems to be the most excruciating bit of video footage I've ever seen in my life. Sting looks so unbelievably uncomfortable, like he doesn't know who Rick is, which is a bit strange because Rick did tell the story about this Sting video, and he says that Sting's people contacted him because Sting was such a big fan of the channel, and how Rick Beato's wife was a massive fan, came along to the interview, and how Sting came in, introduced himself and went into the studio while Rick was setting up, which to me, looking at their sort of body language at the beginning of that video, doesn't seem to quite fit with the story that Rick told, but hey, I don't know. So really I'm telling you that to give you some kind of context as to how I was feeling going to watch it. And some people said to me, "Why are you going to watch him? I didn't think you liked Rick Beato." Well, I went to see him because he is a brilliant YouTuber, he's a brilliant communicator, he's incredibly clever and knowledgeable, he knows so much about music. And also, at the moment I'm doing a show, it's sort of about the history of guitar, where I'm playing all these sort of classic guitar things and I'm talking about the guitar in between, so I thought this is probably quite a good thing to learn about how to do it. And in fact, I'm just going to show you a little bit of footage here, just to prove that I can play the guitar as well as talk nonsense on YouTube videos. now to my sort of review of the show. As I say, he did this video montage at the start, and I have to say, I felt it was a bit too long, because if you're a fan of his channel, you've seen all that footage before, and it felt like it went on for at least 5 minutes. Maybe it didn't, but it seemed to go on for a long time. It wasn't like little short snappy bits, or it was a few short snappy bits, but there were so many of them, it went on for a long time, which, you know, for this short show, I thought that was a big chunk of it. And following that, the first hour of the show, the first half of the show, there was no mention specifically to music or just about music. It was completely autobiographical. He basically told his life story through the first hour, which was brilliantly done and fascinating, and obviously it talked a lot about music, and how it related to him, and how he went to this high school that had the best orchestra, and it was really well done, and it was really interesting, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And it kind of, he came all the way up to the bit where he's talking about the video with his son and how all that happened. And strangely, through that whole first half, the only time he used any of the instruments on stage, he used the piano, and this was the only time he touched it. He basically played the 4 sort of cluster chords. He's playing one chord in the left hand and a different chord in the right hand, and his son was able to identify what they were. That's the only thing he used the piano for through the whole demonstration. I thought there'd be a bit more of that, but no, that was the only time he used the piano. As I mentioned, he's a brilliant communicator. Somebody shouted out, he showed a picture of himself receiving an award about a week before, and he looked like he had the same shirt on. Somebody shouted out, "Have you only got one shirt, Rick?" And he kind of, I wondered how he'd take that, because he doesn't strike me as the kind of person who likes to take the mickey out of himself. But he did, he handled it quite well and went, well, actually, it's a different shirt. He is slightly self-deprecating. There were some photos he put up of himself when he was younger, and he sort of took the mickey out of them slightly, not too much. And he is funny. There's the odd bit that's funny. I mean, he's not a stand-up comedian, but, you know, he's a witty guy, he's a clever guy. So then, after an hour of his story, his life story, there's an interval, and after the interval we're promised some song analysis, some discussion on AI, a Q&A, and a bit of guitar playing. So he comes out after the interval and he brings up a Pro Tools session. I'm thinking, oh, he's going to do one of these what makes this song great type analyses. But it wasn't. It was the start of the AI discussion, and it was the stems from a song that he'd created in AI. And he played us the song, and I mean, this is a different subject, but this is frightening how good it is. I think he's using Suno, and he'd created this song, and it just sounds like a brilliant pop song. He played us a few of the parts. He told us about how he played music to his kids, or he was listening to music and his kids could immediately identify that it was AI, until this sort of latest iteration of the software that he was playing us had got so good that even the kids couldn't really tell. He played us a few stems and stuff, but he didn't really analyse the song and tell us what was going on. He was just he told us a little bit about the process that he'd gone through to create the song. And he did tell some very interesting stories about the AI, about his opinions on it, about how he sat on these congressional hearings, talking about, you know, whether there's going to be any laws related to it, whether there's going to be any copyright, etc., etc. All very interesting, but quite a short section, and as I say, no real song analysis other than showing us what the sort of constituent parts of this AI song were. And then, and this is my real bugbear of the show, he did a Q&A, basically throwing it open to the audience to ask him questions. Now, I've been to these kind of events before, and sometimes you have the questions are already sort of sent in and vetted, and so they pick the best questions and then somebody reads them out. They'll say, who wrote this one? The person will stand up and somebody, you know, on the stage will read it out over the microphone. Or the other way they do it is, if it is a completely random and it's on the fly, like this one is, you have someone walking around with a microphone. But this is the first time I've ever seen this. The people in the audience, and it's a big room, it's a 900 seat room, people were shouting out the questions, which I was up in the balcony, and so it basically consisted of, and this whole section went on, I reckon, over half an hour. I wasn't really watching the clock. But so there was a young guy asked a question. The question seemed to go on for about 5 minutes, and I couldn't hear a word of it. In fact, somebody on the balcony further around from me said, "Can't hear the question," and it was really badly done, this section. You couldn't hear the question, and Rick said at the start, "I'll repeat the question," which he didn't. He kind of paraphrased a couple of the questions, but didn't really repeat the questions. And then, largely, he didn't answer them. Partly because the questions were a bit crap, actually. Some of them, like, people were saying, well, with this new technology, what do you predict the future of music? And Rick's going, quite rightly, well, I don't know, I can't predict the future. He can give an opinion on what might happen, but, you know, and it's vaguely interesting, but they were all like this, and in the end he's going, you keep asking me to predict the future and I can't. There were two very good questions. One, what's the best concert you've ever been to? Which he didn't answer. And then, if you could wake up tomorrow as any famous guitarist, who would you be? And he went, I probably wouldn't wake up as a guitarist. So he didn't answer any of the sort of really good questions that were put to him. So constructive criticism here. I don't want to just be moaning about it, because, as I say, I think he's great. But if they're going to do the Q&A thing again, you need a microphone or vet the questions beforehand. So then after this rather painful Q&A section, he then played his guitar, and he said he was just going to improvise. He was saying, oh, I'm not warmed up. So he kind of started. And this is, I have to say, with Rick's guitar playing, for someone who's so musical, I mean, he clearly has a passion for very technical music and jazz. He was talking about I can't remember his name, the pianist that he met in college, who he played a clip of, whose son was in the audience, actually, this sort of genius jazz pianist. Not my cup of tea at all, but I can appreciate how clever it is. And Rick, very much, when he's playing, he uses a very, very strange guitar sound for me. It's really fizzy and driven, distorted, with loads of delay and maybe chorus on it. Not to my taste at all. And he sort of started playing, he did a few chords, then he started playing these kind of parallel fifth, ninth things, some nice sort of chordal things. Then he played a load of fast fusiony kind of jazzy clever runs. Then he did actually a really nice sort of musical chordy thing, and then a bit more jazzy stuff, and then that was the end, and that was actually the end of the whole show. I do find it funny with Rick's playing that, you know, he analyses these songs and he loves the Beatles, he loves all that proper pop music, that non-complicated pop music, but his playing doesn't seem to reflect that. His playing only reflects that very jazzy thing that he clearly likes as well, which I always find a bit strange. So in conclusion, I'm really glad I went. As I keep saying, he's a great communicator, very charismatic, and what I wasn't expecting is he's pretty cool, actually. And in some of the early photos I noticed he looks a bit like the Fonz. He doesn't have to look like Henry Winkler in some of these younger pictures of him. I actually know a couple of people who recorded some albums with him. This is before he started his YouTube channel. It's probably about 15 years ago. They recorded in the studio where he films his videos. And they told me this before he was famous, but he was quite a complex character. He didn't ever have any photos taken with him, that kind of thing. But they came out with the stuff he produced. I mean, I remember hearing it going, who's produced this? This is incredible. I mean, he's clearly a super talented guy. So my biggest criticism of the whole show was I didn't think there was a lot of musical content. The first half, which I really enjoyed, was completely autobiographical. He didn't really talk about music in any depth other than how it related to him. And the second half, other than this sort of short discussion about AI, a little bit of Pro Tools, it was all this sort of Q&A which wasn't done very well, and then literally a tiny little short bit of guitar playing at the end. I would have liked a lot more musical stuff. I know it's difficult to come up with stuff that maybe he hasn't covered on his show, but just some basic sort of analysis and his process, or maybe his process for making videos, more about his YouTube process, something like that. Something a bit more meaty, and a much shorter Q&A section would have been, I think, made it better. But I would definitely recommend going if he comes over again. And I don't find him annoying anymore. I get him more now. I think I did anyway, but he's cool. I think he's a good guy. Go and see it next time he's on. Hope you enjoyed the video. I bring out new videos 7 PM UK time every Friday, so I hope to see you next week.